Alright kiddos, today I'm going to be teaching you how to fix a windshield wiper motor on a 99 Camry. If I sound like shit in this video, that's perfectly okay because I feel like shit too. So let's just get into it before I decide not to. So we want to grab our broken door handle, reach past the seat that I have no hope of ever sitting in. Thanks, honey. Ignore the douchey foot pedals that I put on when I was 19 and pop the hood. If we come around the front of the car and ignore the compostable Oregon license plate, the latch is somewhere around here. I usually do it with my other hand, but today I'm backwards because, you know, I feel like shit. And after spending an embarrassing amount of time trying to remember where the fucking latch is, holy shit, where did it go? Oh, it's, I forgot, this one lifts up. There we go. Believe it or not, I just did that yesterday. Imagine the good move is to take the battery off, but I can't do that with one hand, so bye. After 10 minutes of running inside, after realizing how horribly under-equipped you were for the job at hand, and briefly considering breaking every rule of batteries everywhere and disconnecting the positive terminal first, you probably come back out and lightly tap with a hammer, not sponsored, and you should have the negative terminal off. First, you take it out, put the new one back in. Quickly orient ourselves. There is a tab here, just a little pull tab, and there's one just like it over on the other side. I'll actually walk over and not be a lazy pile of shit because I have to come over here anyway. You got to take both of those off and this rubber seal here as soon as those are gone. I never have figured out how to take these out without completely destroying them, but that one seemed to make it just fine. This one's probably decorative, shamelessly showing off my knife in the background. You can tell I'm a master mechanic because I grabbed the right size socket on the very first try. So what we're going to do is take that bolt off each of the wipers now. This is the part where future John is jumping back in time to tell you that the bolts for the wiper arms that we took off, yeah, those were 14 millimeter. So you will need that size socket for that. Back to the regular show. When you've got those in hand, you'll have those two empty stumps. Now in the video I watched, you're supposed to mark the position of the wipers before you go pulling them off of there, but I kind of just grabbed a whole new assembly, and it just feels like it'd be easier to put the whole thing in. So I'm not gonna do that, and you'll probably get to see the consequences of it whenever I finish this. My guess is I'm going to have to turn the wipers on a low setting so they just kind of do the slow dit, and while they're resting, turn them off, turn the car off, and then reattach the wiper blades to them. But we'll get there. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to ignore conventional wisdom and lift straight up on these to pull them out of their housings, just like that, and then they're free. Now, at this point, if you've got spots like this, like any Camry will, honestly any car that's older than like 5 years probably does, where all the paint's coming off of the wiper arms there, I think what I'm going to do on that is the same thing I did on this. I have some black spray paint, and I can just spray over it so they look brand new, and then that'll look crisp over there. Back to the current story. Now it's time to pull this rubber piece off. I'm trying to see if I can do it with one hand so I can... Ha! I got it off the hook. And then it should... I'm trying to be gentle with it. I was nowhere near this nice at the scrapyard the other day, grabbing the replacement part for this. But yeah, there's just a bunch of these tabs that I'm completely not filming right now. You can see that right there. I can't zoom with one hand, but I probably can, I just don't know how. We'll just finish it up on this side. And there's you. This is actually in pretty good condition considering how old this car is. I mean, 99 to now, that's pretty good. I should probably take the XM receiver off since I don't even have XM and haven't in like almost a decade. Now, a mistake I made that you can avoid is I should have taken these off with the rubber because they are actually holding this plastic piece down. So I'm going to try to get at least the ones on this side off because the assembly is all under this side, but I might have to take that one off too because it looks like it's over top of it. We'll figure it out. Okay, no, I rescind my previous statement because these, I can't do it with one hand. These will slip over one side if you pull them to the side, and then the other, and they just come off. So now that will actually just come away from there. So I didn't mess it up. What I am gonna do though is take this inside and wash it off. And I might even coat it in a coat of black spray, because that's a lot of plastic that's actually exposed right behind the hood of the car there. So I think I am gonna take them in, clean them up. I might just have a whole paint setup and clean everything at once while I'm in there. And if it bothers you that I'm setting stuff on my truck paint, I'm trying to justify being able to paint it a different color. So the more the merrier. Grab a quick swig of Skittles C4, not sponsored. And we can get back. Other thing you want to do while you have this open is if you have lots of pine needles or leaves or anything, you want to clear them out of the sides here, because I believe there's a channel that's supposed to funnel water, rainwater, off your car over here. And you don't want that to clog because reasons. Okay, so now we're going to take off these two bolts, this bolt back here, and those two, and this whole assembly will come out. But first we're going to pinch on the back here. I'll show you when I get it completely off. There's a pin on the back that you've got to push down on, and the whole thing comes off actually pretty easily. So we're going to tuck that knot there, because that will get dirty. I wonder if I can just hook it. There, it's hooked. It's out of the way. I'll take those bolts off now. Every project I've done on my Camry has been with 3 differently sized bolts. They are 10s, 12s, and 14s. This particular project, this particular part of this project, these are 10mm bolts. Probably be a good time to wash all this nasty ass gunk off of here too. I'm probably gonna do that. Oh, yeah. I have a truck battery in the car. I bet you're curious about that. Okay, once all your screws are out of there, you can just lift the whole assembly out and it's out. That's what it's like to be done with that part of the process. Now I just gotta put everything back together. Now, if you're anything like me, you make a lot of mistakes, and that's perfectly fine. I am going to be the one here to tell you today that we all make mistakes. But before we go and make it a bigger mistake than it needs to be, I'm going to plug that in and put the negative terminal back on the battery, just enough for it to make contact for a minute. And I'm going to hop in the car and make sure that this is going to work before I go and put the whole thing back together. Okay, wipers are off. I'm going to turn power to the car on, and then while watching this here, I'm going to flip the stick down. Nothing? Seriously? Nothing? No movement at all? Was it not that? Shit! Does the engine maybe need to be on for it to... Please? Please just work? So, yeah, we've got a couple options here that may or may not be true. So, option 1 is this part's bad. Option 2 is it was never that all along, and it's actually the switch in the car. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one. Okay, so I want to include you in my thought process here, because this is eventually going to work, and I just want to chronicle the steps that I took to get to where I got, so anybody following this can go through the same basic process. So if it's not the wiper motor itself, which isn't actually ruled out, I did get that from a scrapyard, so it could just be a bad motor. Now, I bought it with a warranty, so I can just go back and get a new motor. That is entirely possible. And I honestly might do that just to rule it out. The other possibility is the switch itself could be bad, which is something I'm going to look into in a second here. I did change the switch out last year, and it seemed to help it a bit. But again, it was something from a scrapyard, so it could just be a bad switch. The only other possibility I can think of is a fuse somewhere. But the reason I didn't jump straight into thinking it was a fuse was because the wipers were slowly dying out, and then ended up like not being able to move from the very bottom position at a point. Like it was, for a while, if I pushed them and gave them a nudge, they would work for a bit, but then they stopped. And so I assumed it was the motor, because that just kind of makes sense to me. Like I said, the motor's not ruled out, but I think it might be time to run back to the scrapyard. That way I can get a new motor and a new switch, and just rule both of those out before I go thinking it's a wiring problem or a fuse problem. And the only reason I don't check the fuse out of how easy those are is because I had an aftermarket auto start put in, and the guys who installed it put it right in front of my interior fuse box and left me no room to wiggle it out of the way to check my fuses. So I have to take my whole dash panel apart, and this might be the time to do that. But yeah, so that's a plan. That might mean a change of locale, so I might end up at the scrapyard in a minute here. So yeah, just to satisfy the inner demon in my head that was saying that I was being an idiot and it was probably super simple, I did take that off. I'm going to have to put it back on now, but yes, that is the auto start that, honestly, I just hate the installation of that. I'm going to have to redo it myself or pay somebody to move it, because that's a ridiculous spot for that to be in. But this is the wiper fuse, and as you can see, the metal there is intact. So unless there was major corrosion blocking it, which I'll freaking jam it in and out just to rub anything off, it should be fine. So that's ruled out. And just in case you didn't know, this is the little drawer that sits here when the assembly's all together. You just open it up and pop it out, and it has the diagram that shows that the wiper is that fourth fuse down that's 25 amp. So that's the one I pulled out, and I'm just gonna put it right back in here, but it's hard to do with one hand, so I'm gonna take you off video for it. I've had this car since I was 18, and somehow I never noticed that it was held up by zip ties in the corner there, so we're gonna have to go through later and replace that, because I don't like that. Next step in diagnosing this, there's one screw holding this panel in here on the bottom of the steering column. So I'm gonna set that right there for safekeeping. If we pull this apart, I'm gonna need two hands again. I forgot two things for a moment here. First is that to remove the column casing here, you have to take a screw off here and a screw off on this side. Now, the other thing I forgot is if you do not put your key in the ignition, the steering wheel locks in place. So remember both those things and don't make the mistakes I did. Oh, now this just pulls right out of here. You'll have to kind of thread it around the steering wheel handle there. Oh, there's that plastic piece that goes in there. And if you lift that up, pull the wheel down, you can get the top piece of casing off there too. What we have here now is the switch, and if I remember right, let's see, I believe I had to pull these two screws off, and then it just comes off the back here. First, we want to, well, do we want to unplug that, or do we want to make sure it's not just that's wobbly? The bad connection, maybe? No? Nothing's moving? Okay. Well, I tried, so I'm going to take the screws out. I'm going to just pop this out right here. Come on, baby. They never really give you much to grab onto with these. Okay, so that is out, and the screws are next. Hold up. This is the part where you don't want to do that. I started taking that out, and then I actually looked at everything, and this is not, no, you don't need this whole thing. It's actually the two screws over here on the sides, and then this just comes straight out of here. Now, Oh, did I also get... Ooh, this might be replaceable too. I'm going to just try a couple things real quick. I might try taking the casing off of this and wiping it down just to see if maybe some moisture or something connected where it shouldn't have. If that doesn't work, then yeah, I'm going to go back to the scrapyard and replace this and the motor and just see what happens. Now, there's just a couple pull tabs on this, so I'm actually going to show how I'm disassembling it. But basically, if you pull that tab off of there, it's just a little hook. The other two just hinge off the back there and it'll come right off. Now, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see it on camera. Probably a lot better from this angle. I don't know much about electronics, but that looks pretty dirty to me. And I am very curious to see whether or not I can, cleaning it off would help. So I'm going to go inside. I don't believe I have any rubbing alcohol here, but what I do have, because there's fantastically a female in my house, I have nail polish remover, which is 100% acetone. Now that is probably way more than I really need to use on this, and hell, it might even ruin it. But if I have to replace it anyway, that's not a big deal. Okay, now I have wiped that down and put it back in just enough that it should work if it's going to. So it should be running. If it's not, which it isn't, then we need new parts. The other thing I think I could check to make sure it isn't the switch. Well, the switch is working to some extent, so yeah, not sure which it is now. Okay, it is now a day later. I went to the scrapyard and replaced both the switch and that whole assembly. Just kind of figured I'd get both of them. It's cheap enough. And if we look now, I haven't put it back together yet because I wanted to make sure to get it all clean and everything, but you can kind of see it down there. Yeah, that's it. It's working. Just got to put it all back together. Interesting design, not on the car, but on the tools used to make it, is 10mm sockets are specifically engineered to fall in the most difficult places to get them out. Okay, I've got all those bolts back in all the way. I've got that kind of set into place because I remember the right side needed to go in, almost set that in, and remembered I needed to document my progress at this point. Now I've got both the plastic cowlings in place, and I know I said I was probably going to paint them. I decided not to because I just kind of need this car working right now, but with as easy as it was taking them off, I could always do it later. I have learned a very important lesson today, and that is that these clips are actually supposed to be in these weather stripping holes like this. So guess who gets to go through and fix every one of these? Okay, now with that mildly irritating sidetrack out of the way, time to figure out where the wipers are supposed to position. I'm going to do my best to kind of prop my hand here. I've got the key in the ignition turned on. I'm just going to put it on the first one. There. I just waited for it to settle back into place, so I know that that should be flat down. So hopefully they should be good. Almost forgot these side tabs, but I made sure to set them right next to my bolts for the wipers. So we'll just put that back on. And yeah, in my infinite genius, I went through and wiped the glass down instead of, keeping track of where their settled position was. So I'm kind of just guessing at this point that they should be right around there. And I can always adjust them, so we're going to go. Now, on this car, I don't know about others, but you got this neat little driver and P for passenger to keep track of which side's which. I don't know about other models of car, but if you are watching this to learn about another car, how dare you? I'm just kidding. Hopefully it's the same. You like how much metal I'm habitually setting right next to the battery that's fully connected? Safety. Okay, among the many things that I did flawlessly in this video, I also left the keys in the ignition, so that's cool, but let's give her a whirl and see how they work. Oh my goodness, I have windshield wipers. And they work slightly out of time, it looks like. That's odd. Maybe I just put them on weird. It doesn't look like that one's settling quite down all the way, but it looks like they're covering the whole window. So, I mean, I'm going to count that as a win. Now I flip that switch off, take the keys out, and just make sure they settled properly. Yeah, looks like this is a win. So now, as I'm sitting here at the end of this, looking at a playground through my about to be clean window for the first time in a while, what I really want you to get out of this is you don't have to be a professional to do this kind of stuff yourself. Hell, I'm obviously not even very good, and I managed to get it. I mean, they work. See, they're working. So it's not hard. It's actually, you know, just do a little research. It's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. And yeah, you save a ton of money, and it turns out great. And there's a sense of pride and, ah, shit, I never put